All right, today we're tackling a project of updating gauges. So we're going to be changing the 4 fuel gauges and 2 volt gauges and our rudder indication gauge. So this is a pretty big project. It is quite a wiring mess behind there. I'll show it to you here in a minute. But it's really going to give us a better updated look. And secondly, we currently are running with only 2 gauges working most of the time and only 1 gauge working all the time when it comes to fuel. So we've changed the sender. So what, we thought it was a sender problem. So we went ahead and changed the sender in the tank. Turned out that didn't fix it. It was definitely the gauge. So I kept this sender, and to understand exactly how the new Veritron gauges work, because they're quite different now. There's a lot of connections, warning lights, all kinds of things. So I went from their directions and plugged it in, got 24 volts to the gauge, moved it, and I had the gauge working. So my assumptions on how to hook it up was 100% right, so we're good there. So I'm going to start to tackle some of the easier connections. The sensor wire is right out here, easy to get to. So we've gone ahead and started. The green wire is the sensor wire. So we've got him in place. So we're just going to go ahead and heat shrink that down. As soon as I get a new battery for the heat gun. All right, so we're going to go ahead, get our connection heat shrunk down here. And then we'll go ahead and get the sensor connection on the gauge ready. Then the next parts of it, I'm going to have to go down below. What they did is they kind of went in series with all the wiring. So I've got to do a lot of double and triple connections to get everything to work the way it should. So going to be interesting with that. But in the end, I think I'm going to end up cleaning up a lot of wiring down there. Being able to, get rid of some of those splitters and Ys and stuff they have down there. But, anyway, to be seen once we get down there a little bit further. So there's the wiring I was talking about. That's the mess we're looking at. All this yellow and red, which is simply feeding the gauges power and ground, as well as the lights on the gauges. So back then, the lights were independent bulbs, so they needed a power and a ground. Now the new gauge has a single ground and, a single power for the illumination. So we're going to be able to save a lot of these ground wires, which is good news, but got to trace them back, get them out of the way. So right now I'm just hooking up one final test. As soon as that's hooked up, we're going to perform the test, make sure everything works. And then at that point, we should be in pretty good shape to go ahead and start, complete dismantle and putting in the new gauges. I'm still going to go one by one, just better safe than, trying to trace all these yellows and reds, because the power for the gauge and the sender for the gauge are both red wires. So I don't want to start mixing those up and then have to diagnose and troubleshoot back to the sender. So we'll be back with you here once we get this test ready to go. So we've got it just set in there. We're going to do a quick test. So we power it up. Gauge works itself back to empty and then comes back to full. So gauge is working. Let me try the illumination. We're not going to be able to see it with all the sun. Oh no, you can maybe see a little bit of the red in there. So the gauge is working. Everything's wired up correctly. So that's the good news for now on that. So let me go ahead and see how I'm going to clean up everything else and how we're going to make that fit in there nicely. Get the plastic cleaned up so the edges look good. Going from these square bezels to the rounds. So we'll get you back as soon as we have a little more progress. All right. Thanks. So we're under the dash, and I was just going to give you a glimpse of how I'm trimming down the wiring. So basically this is a voltmeter harness. So simply a power, a ground, and then the light. So I'm not able to thin away probably as many wires as I'd like to. I'm not quite done yet, but I'm in the process. So here I'll give you a glimpse of where we're at. So right now, those 4 gauges on top, those are the fuel gauges. They're all in. I've still got a lot of wiring to clean up. And then these other 2, that's next 2 down, are the voltmeters. So one's in. I'm putting the last one in right now. Like I said, it's going well to clean up the wiring, but probably not quite as much as I would like. The only gauge left now is going to be the rudder indicator gauge. That's the next one we'll work on once we're done with this. And I am changing the grounds for the rest of the instrument lights. There's just a ton of excessive wire. So we're going to get rid of a bunch of that, just kind of simplify that ground circuit. Not sure why it was so complex. I think just the old style gauges. So, yep. So that's where we're at. We'll have the volts and the fuels all done, and then tie everything up and get that rudder done. All right. So there we've got all the gauges in. Wiring cleaned up the best we could. It didn't clean up as nicely as I would have liked it to, but we made headway. We've got a few less wires there than we used to. So at this point now, the only fail we had was the rudder indicator gauge. Did not work with our sender, which was one of my fears I had. We have an older sender. Our existing rudder gauge works, and it's not close to the other gauges, so you know it's a bummer. But yeah, so that's not going to work out for us. But at this point, we've got working fuel gauges, working voltmeters, so everything's an improvement. Now we'll get you a look at what it looks like on the top side. All right, there are the gauges from the top side. So turn on the key, see how they work. They kind of go down notchy, and then they do a swing, and they come back to the levels. So yeah, and yes, all our tanks are currently full. But yeah, it works. It's nice to see all the gas gauges working. We're super excited about that. It's been a bit since we had working gauges. So going to call it a successful project, even though it's kind of a bummer we couldn't change that rudder gauge. I'll do some looking and see if I can find a new sender. But the kit we priced out with the sender was quite spendy, like almost $200. So the one there works good, and it's not by the other gauges, right? It's down here, so it's kind of sitting alone, and it works fine. So yeah, we'll call it good for now. Project done.